It happened in less than 30 seconds. An old janitor in a faded blue work shirt stood alone before a judge, accused of stealing from the very courthouse he had cleaned for nearly 20 years. Lawyers shook their heads. Spectators whispered that it was a sad ending for a forgotten old man. The evidence looked impossible to overcome. Then the courtroom doors burst open, and 3 accomplished women walked inside carrying boxes of documents that would not only destroy every lie told against him, but reveal a truth so powerful that no one in the room would ever forget the man everyone had overlooked. Before this unforgettable story begins, if you believe kindness always comes back, if you believe forgiveness is stronger than revenge, and if you believe hope can change a life, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our growing community. For nearly 40 years, Graham Holloway had lived a life that most people never noticed. Every morning before sunrise colored the sky, he quietly unlocked doors, swept hallways, emptied trash bins, polished windows, and repaired broken furniture wherever someone needed an extra pair of hands. He wasn't famous. He wasn't wealthy. He never expected applause. His greatest pride came from leaving every place cleaner than he found it and helping strangers without expecting anything in return. The people who worked beside him often assumed he had no family because no one ever visited him during lunch breaks or holidays. The truth was much heavier than loneliness. Years earlier, Graham had married the love of his life, Marlene, but she became seriously ill only 5 years into their marriage. After fighting with remarkable courage, she passed away before they could have children. The loss shattered him. For months, he wandered through life carrying unbearable silence. Many believed he would never smile again. Then, on an ordinary rainy afternoon 20 years earlier, everything changed. Driving home after finishing an extra shift at an elementary school, Graham noticed flashing emergency vehicles surrounding a wrecked station wagon. Traffic had stopped, and frightened people stood watching from the roadside. Among the confusion, 3 little girls sat together beneath a blanket on the curb. Their faces were covered with tears, dirt, and disbelief. They had just lost both parents in a devastating accident. The oldest, aged 11, tried desperately to comfort her younger sisters even while her own hands trembled uncontrollably. The middle child stared silently at the pavement, unable to process the tragedy. The youngest kept asking when her mother would wake up. Graham never forgot those eyes. Over the following weeks, he learned through local news that the girls had no close relatives willing or able to care for them. They faced being separated into different foster homes across the state. The thought haunted him. Friends called him unrealistic when he quietly began asking social workers what would be required to foster children. They reminded him that he was approaching retirement age, earned very little, lived alone in a modest 2-bedroom house, and had no parenting experience. Everything about the situation seemed impossible. Yet Graham couldn't accept the idea of 3 sisters losing each other after already losing everything else. Months of paperwork, inspections, interviews, and financial reviews followed. Every spare dollar disappeared into making his tiny home safer and more welcoming. He repaired loose floorboards, painted bedrooms in cheerful colors, assembled second-hand furniture, and built bookshelves by hand because buying new ones was too expensive. Finally, one bright afternoon, social workers brought the girls to their new home. Their names were Meredith, Tessa, and Bryn. None of them smiled. The house felt unfamiliar. Their grief filled every room. Graham understood that love could never erase pain overnight, so he never tried forcing happiness upon them. Instead, he offered consistency. Breakfast every morning. Homework after school. Family dinners around the same worn wooden table. Weekend library visits. Long walks through neighborhood parks whenever life became overwhelming. Little by little, broken hearts began finding reasons to trust again. Money was always tight. Graham accepted every extra cleaning shift available. He repaired neighbors' fences, painted garages, fixed leaking faucets, and collected discarded furniture that he carefully restored before selling. Many evenings ended with aching muscles and exhausted hands, but he never complained. Whenever the girls apologized for costing too much, Graham simply smiled and reminded them that people were never expenses. They were blessings. Those words became the foundation of their family. Meredith developed a passion for reading legal biographies after a librarian introduced her to stories about attorneys who defended innocent people. She became fascinated by justice and fairness. Tessa loved science. She spent hours repairing broken radios and old electronics Graham found during cleanup jobs. Every successful repair made her confidence grow. Bryn possessed remarkable compassion. She volunteered at hospitals as a teenager and dreamed of helping children who felt frightened and alone. Graham encouraged every dream, even when he secretly wondered how he could possibly afford college. The answer came through sacrifice. He postponed retirement. He sold his late wife's jewelry only after spending an entire afternoon quietly holding each piece, thanking Marlene in his heart for helping their daughters one last time. He refinanced his tiny home. He skipped vacations he never mentioned. He wore the same patched winter coat for nearly 15 years. Whenever the girls noticed something missing, Graham always claimed he simply preferred simple living. Only much later did they understand the truth. Years passed. Meredith graduated from law school with honors. Tessa became a respected forensic accountant specializing in financial fraud. Bryn earned a medical degree and dedicated her career to pediatric rehabilitation. At every graduation, Graham sat quietly in the audience wearing his best second-hand suit, applauding until his hands hurt while tears streamed freely down his weathered face. People congratulated the successful young women. Almost no one noticed the aging janitor sitting proudly in the last row. Life finally seemed peaceful. Then everything collapsed. A new private management company took over courthouse maintenance where Graham had worked faithfully for nearly 2 decades. The company's regional director, Victor Langford, viewed longtime employees as expensive inconveniences. Rather than honoring experience, he searched aggressively for reasons to replace older workers with lower-paid contractors. Graham unknowingly became his easiest target. One afternoon, during a routine inventory review, several expensive electronic tablets purchased for courthouse administration were reported missing. Security footage showed Graham pushing his cleaning cart near the storage office. No footage actually showed theft. No fingerprints connected him. No witness saw him take anything. Yet management insisted circumstantial evidence was enough. The police investigation moved quickly. Local newspapers printed heartbreaking headlines describing an elderly courthouse janitor accused of stealing government property. Neighbors avoided eye contact. Former co-workers stopped answering calls. Everything Graham had built over decades seemed to disappear within days. The worst part wasn't public embarrassment. It was believing his daughters might suffer because of him. He begged them not to interrupt their careers. He insisted the truth would eventually prevail. They promised to respect his wishes. But they also quietly began investigating. Meredith immediately recognized serious weaknesses in the prosecution's timeline. Tessa noticed unusual accounting inconsistencies involving equipment purchases made months before the alleged theft. Bryn saw the devastating emotional toll false accusations were having on the man who had once carried all 3 sisters through unimaginable grief. Together, they formed an unbreakable team. Without seeking publicity, they spent weeks reviewing financial records, surveillance timestamps, employee schedules, maintenance logs, vendor invoices, and procurement contracts. The deeper they looked, the stranger everything became. Missing equipment had actually been reported before Graham even cleaned the relevant hallway. Purchase orders had been duplicated. Serial numbers didn't match inventory lists. Invoices referenced deliveries that never occurred. Someone had manipulated official records. Tessa eventually uncovered shell companies receiving inflated maintenance payments connected to Victor Langford's office. Meredith realized Graham wasn't the thief. He had become the perfect distraction hiding a much larger fraud scheme. Court day arrived. Graham stood quietly before the judge, believing the truth alone might not save him. Then the courtroom doors opened. Meredith entered carrying legal files. Tessa followed with forensic financial reports. Bryn carried medical evaluations documenting the emotional damage caused by the false accusations against an elderly caregiver. Their arrival stunned everyone. Over the next several hours, every false accusation unraveled. Financial records exposed millions diverted through fraudulent contracts. Expert analysis demonstrated manipulated inventory reports. Witness testimony confirmed altered surveillance logs. Independent audits verified forged authorization signatures. Most importantly, indisputable evidence proved Graham had never possessed, transported, or benefited from the supposedly stolen property. Instead, he had unknowingly worked near evidence that powerful people desperately wanted hidden. Silence filled the courtroom. The prosecutor withdrew every criminal charge. Investigators immediately opened a criminal inquiry into Victor Langford and several associates. The judge looked toward Graham with visible emotion before formally declaring him completely innocent. But what happened afterward became the moment everyone remembered. Meredith requested permission to address the court. She spoke not as an attorney seeking recognition, but as a daughter honoring the father who changed 3 lives forever. She explained how one ordinary janitor had refused to let 3 orphaned sisters be separated. She described endless sacrifices hidden behind quiet smiles. She told the courtroom about patched shoes, repaired bicycles, homemade birthday cakes, late-night homework help, and unconditional love that never depended on blood. She reminded everyone that society often measures people by income, titles, or influence while overlooking those whose character quietly transforms generations. By the time she finished, hardly anyone remained dry-eyed. Court employees who had barely acknowledged Graham for years stood and applauded. One after another, spectators rose until the entire courtroom stood together. Graham lowered his head, overwhelmed by a recognition he had never sought. Outside the courthouse, reporters rushed toward the family expecting anger and demands for revenge. Instead, Graham surprised everyone. He said the greatest victory wasn't clearing his own name. It was proving that goodness planted years earlier could grow into strength no lie could ever destroy. He asked people to remember every overlooked worker they passed each day because dignity belonged to everyone, not only those wearing expensive suits. News of the case spread across the country. Former students whose classrooms Graham had cleaned wrote letters thanking him for encouraging them during difficult childhoods. Teachers remembered supplies mysteriously appearing after Graham quietly purchased them himself. Neighbors admitted he had repaired homes without accepting payment. Countless forgotten acts of kindness resurfaced, revealing a lifetime spent lifting others. The local community organized a celebration in the town square. Instead of honoring famous athletes or wealthy donors, they celebrated a janitor whose greatest achievement was choosing compassion when nobody was watching. The city renamed a youth scholarship after Graham Holloway, supporting children who had overcome family hardship. Meredith volunteered legal services through the program. Tessa provided financial literacy workshops. Bryn offered free medical screenings for foster families. Together, they continued the legacy Graham had started with one impossible decision made 20 years earlier. As the ceremony ended beneath warm afternoon sunshine, Graham looked across the crowd and saw children laughing, families embracing, and strangers helping one another. His heart filled with quiet gratitude. He realized that love had never been measured by the size of his paycheck or the title printed on his work badge. It had been measured by every life made stronger because he chose kindness when no one expected it. Before this story comes to its close, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment and tell us what you believe is the greatest lesson from Graham's journey. Can one act of kindness truly change generations, or has someone in your own life quietly shaped your future through love and sacrifice? Graham returned home that afternoon to the same modest house where 3 frightened little girls had once arrived carrying only grief. The walls were older. The paint had faded. The furniture remained simple. Yet every room overflowed with memories of courage, laughter, tears, forgiveness, and hope. The house had never been rich in money, but it had always been rich in love, and in the end, that love became stronger than every accusation, every hardship, and every year that had passed. 3 orphan girls had once been rescued by one forgotten janitor. 20 years later, those same daughters walked into a courtroom and rescued the man who had first rescued them. Life had completed a beautiful circle, proving that genuine love never disappears. It patiently waits for the day it can come home. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember, even the smallest act of kindness may become the reason someone else finds the strength to keep going, and sometimes the quietest heroes leave behind the loudest legacy.